Have you ever been woken up in the middle of the night and just had like perpetual thoughts that you just can't get out of your head that keep you up at night? Or have you ever struggled being a mom and a business owner and trying to do all the things and like emotions are coming up and you don't know what to do with them? Or do you feel like your heart is racing, your stomach is upset, you're getting headaches or clenching your jaw or having like night sweats? These are different forms of anxiety that actually can be manifested in your body. And on today's episode of the Rainmaker Family Show, we interviewed Natty Lewis, who is an incredible speaker who talks all about self doubt, anxiety, practical tips on how to get your body actually out of fight or flight. And I think this is so important in this day and age right now, where not only adults and entrepreneurs and women and moms and young kids are experiencing anxiety in all different levels. And so I'm so excited to talk about this today. I know Stephen and I personally, as we were interviewing Natty, got so much breakthrough on how to recognize anxiety, how to even like teach our boys how to regulate their emotions and how this is actually like signaling and sensing to our bodies that something is off. And more than anything, that it's not something to be afraid of, but actually to lean in. So grab
hmm
your notes. We think this episode is going to bring you and so many other listeners so much freedom.
All right, all right. What's up, Natty? Welcome to the Rainmaker Family Show.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
We're so excited to have you on. Natty is an expert in a lot of different topics, but I feel like there's going to be some that are complete breakthrough for you as our listener. And one of the things I've seen just blown up on your social media is the topic of anxiety. And I feel like this topic is blowing up in the world right now. A lot of people are experiencing anxiety, whether it's teenagers, whether it's little kids, whether it's in parenting, whether it's in business. And so I want to start right there. Let's just hit the nail on the head and talk about anxiety, but also anxiety relief. Natalie, how would you say managing anxiety or stress has evolved for you over the years? Like, where did it start and where have you gone?
Yeah, I came from a background of being an athlete, a really competitive athlete, and didn't even know what anxiety was. When people would talk about anxiety, I thought they had a mental problem and they should just toughen up. Like, suck it up, buttercup. The rest of us do that. Like, that's how we do life. And I really had a negative attitude towards people who struggled with the hard things in life because I felt like, if you want something bad enough, you just go get it. That's because that's how I was. I did not realize at the time that I was doing a lot of things that were helping me that were totally unintentional.
Well,
And it was because of my athletics. So when I stopped competing competitively in athletics at the end of my college career, I started to experience anxiety, especially as I entered the workforce. So I became a mom and I had a full-time job and I was leaving my child during the day and my husband was, but we were balancing school and work and my baby and my career and the evolution of this. And I wasn't competing and I wasn't moving my body the way I'd ever moved it in the past. And I started experiencing severe anxiety and I didn't know what it was, first of all, and I didn't understand it, second of all. And it just kept getting worse and worse and worse because what happens with typical anxiety is we experience it. And then we're like, wait a second, why in the world am I all of a sudden having a rapid heart rate? Why is there tightening in my chest? Why am I sweating all of a sudden when things happen? Why do I feel like two hamsters just moved into my stomach and have made residence in there on a constant basis? Like, what is happening to me? And because we don't understand it, we all of a sudden think, oh my gosh, like something's wrong with me. And so I went in and started undergoing physical tests. I thought I was having a heart problem and everyone kept saying, there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with me. And I'm like, there's nothing wrong with me. Are you freaking kidding me? Let me tell you what's wrong with me. I can't even breathe. Like I think about things and I can't breathe. That something is wrong with me. And I woke up one morning in the fetal position in my closet and I couldn't breathe and I couldn't move and I couldn't move my arms and my legs. And I was hospitalized for having a severe panic attack. And in the course of this, they ran like 14 diagnostic tests and they kept coming in the room and telling me, nothing's wrong with you. And that actually made me it literally exacerbated my problem because in my world, something was definitely wrong with me. And it was in that moment that they walked in the room and we had been there for hours. They'd run all these tests and a social worker came in the room. And she came in the room and started talking to me about whether or not I was capable of taking care of my children that were at home. Thing happened. It was like a light bulb switched on in my brain, and every single part of my body turned on. My brain turned on, my body turned on, and I was like, "Oh, hell no. You're not going to question my capacity to raise my children." And I got up, I walked away, and I was all of a sudden like, why can my legs and arms move all of a sudden? And I had to start thinking about that. I had to study it. I had to understand what in the world just happened. And
Mm.
if I could figure out what just happened, then I could figure out how to intentionally, manually turn the light on. And so that's what I started to study. And my study of that led to my capacity to do what I do today, which I am incredibly grateful for, and where I take other people and I help them understand anxiety. And really, when you talk about how do I deal with it differently now, and that is the biggest answer, is I understand it. We have been taught in our whole lives that we have our physical body and we have our emotions and our mental self. And fortunately, over time, the mental health has become a bigger topic. The problem with that awareness right now is it's still being taught incorrectly, where we have physical
Mm.
health and we have mental health, and they're somehow owning these two separate silos, and they're
Mm.
not separate. Like, they're not separate. If I could have anybody take anything away from this call, it would be you are a emotional, mental being having a physical experience, and those are not separable conditions. If we do not physically engage with ourselves, we will never overcome anxiety because it's not a mental illness. It is a mental, emotional situation that's having real physiology. And when we understand that and we engage with it and we stop being afraid of it, we can control it. Then it becomes a little bit of our superpower.
That's epic. Wow. I feel like people are listening and they're like, tell me the light switch. I want to know.
Mhm.
And I know this isn't like now you've developed this thing and you can flip a light switch. It's as
Mhm.
easy as flipping a light switch. But in the
Yes.
beginning, I'm sure you kind of noticed, okay, it felt like it happened as fast as a light switch. But you probably had to go in a process to figure it out, right? To figure
Yep.
out, okay, let me try this, let me try that, and actually
Mhm.
recognizing it. Tell me about like the second or the third or the fourth time, that you really were able to shift out of it.
Yep.
What were some things in those early days that started to work for you?
Yeah. Well, the first step is actually recognition. Like I tell people, I want you to get a master's degree in recognition. I want you to become so very aware of yourself because for so long, anxiety was looked at as a problem, a label. I have anxiety.
Mhm.
Anxiety is bad. Anxiety is stopping me. I can't do this because I'm paralyzed by anxiety. It's become this big negative when really anxiety is another emotion. And if we were to
Mm.
stop long enough to say, what am I actually feeling? Then I would say the first step is recognition. Number one, recognize physiologically what is happening to your body, yours specifically, because everybody is different. And for every human being, it starts in the toes and moves its way up. And most of us don't recognize
Yeah.
the stuff in the feet,
Mm.
but somebody will
Interesting.
start to tap their toe like this uncontrollably.
Yeah.
Some people
Mm.
get itchy feet. Some people's feet go numb. Then people will get cramps like calf cramps or quad cramps or leg cramps. And
Mm.
then people feel it in the stomach. And some people feel it like hamsters got let loose in there. Some people feel it like they've been riding an elevator up and down all day. Some people feel it like it tightens and then they feel like they're going to throw up. Some people, then we feel it in our heart. Some people feel a rapid heart rate. Some people feel heart constriction and they can't breathe
Mm.
very well. You'll notice some people, when they get really anxious, they'll pull on their clothing because it feels like there's a weight and it's sitting on their chest and they cannot make it stop. And it's hard
Mm.
to breathe. It'll move up into the throat and people will feel constriction in their throat or they'll tightness right here and their tension in their neck, or they'll feel heat. Some people will get hot and prickly ears because heat starts to rise up their head.
Mm.
Some people get headaches and other people blurred vision. Everyone's a little bit different. But if you will start with the first step of actually recognizing what is your body's response physically
Mm.
to what's happening, then you can understand there's a reason for this. When we go through the feeling of anxiety, it's literally just our body sending cues to us saying, whatever's going on right now, you don't feel entirely safe. I see this, for example, with female business owners all the time. They're trying to run a family, run a home, and run a business. And they're
Mhm.
sitting at the computer and they're trying to do something really important for their business. And their 2-year-old walks in the room and they need their attention right now. But I'm trying to do this for my business, but I'm supposed to be a mom. And if I tell my kid no right now, then I'm a terrible mom, but I'm a terrible mom trying to run a business. And now I'm trying to run a business and I'm a terrible mom. And here it comes. And you can
Mhm.
feel the heart starts to race and the mind starts to spin and the hands start to get clammy and sweaty. and you're feeling unsafe because you're literally battling between an identity of, am I a business owner or a mother? Because we haven't
Mm,
learned how to claim both yet, right? So we experience this physiology. If we can recognize right then what is happening physiologically, we can actually engage with it right then. So the first
mm,
step I tell everybody, get a master's degree in recognition. Stop being afraid of
mm,
that moment and start thinking, what am I actually experiencing right now? What is my body actually telling me right now? What do I feel?
mm.
And what
That's so good.
triggered that, right?
That's so good. I've never heard that it starts in your feet and then like works its way up. And I love how you're saying get a master's degree in recognition. So say like I'm recognizing like, yeah, I have a lot of like pain in my chest or my stomach and my gut are a little like messed up. What would be the next steps after they've like made that recognition and aren't afraid of it? Like, okay, this is happening. I'm starting to feel unsafe. And then how do you create like safety for your spirit, for your body to like, okay, I'm going to be okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we engage with it. So those are the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous systems. And so we're not going to get geeky on that stuff. We're just going to say, hey, if I'm having a hard time breathing, I need to breathe. If
Mm,
I'm feeling really hot, I need to get cold in me quickly. If my stomach is upset, I'm going to settle it on purpose. And for
mm,
most people, because we're trying to address these things, if we'll just do two things. I can and one, if you're okay, I'd love to walk your listeners through one
Yeah.
exercise that works
yeah,
for
let's
almost
do it.
everybody to just calm things down. I want you guys to try it because I want you to feel what it feels like on the other side. So you just have your feet on the ground. I want you to curl your toes and I want you to bring
Mm,
tension into your toes. And then I want you to lift your toes up. So there's your toes are flexed, but now there's tension in your shins. And then I want you to
mm,
flex your quads and I want you to flex your butt. Those glutes, get them nice and tight, and then flex your abs and then flex your shoulders and then clench your hands. And I want you to just give tension through your whole body on purpose right now. And we're going to take a deep breath through the nose and we're going to hold it at the top. Don't let go yet. Then we're going to go up again and not out. So spike it and just squeeze everything really hard. And when we let it out, I want you to make a noise through your chest. Let everything go and shake for a second.
Wow.
And I
I
want
realized
you
I
to,
wasn't breathing at all at the first
yep.
part.
Now I want you to pay attention to what your head feels like for just a second. Pay attention to what
Yeah.
happens in your head. And it'll feel a little bit like a decompression valve, like somebody just went, psst.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is there's a very scientific reason for that. But that right
yeah,
there is what they often, like some people call that a nervous system reset. And it's
mm,
literally addressing those elements of the nervous system because we're doing some things we don't consciously normally do. We don't normally tense our body in a very specific order. We don't normally breathe in and then in again. And when we
mhm,
breathe out, we don't usually breathe through our chest. And so there's a regulatory component there that totally tells the brain, whoa, 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 whoa. In a space of unsafety, we go to fight or flight, but you're thinking
mm,
about things we don't normally think about. So we're recognizing we're not in an unsafe situation. And it can
mm,
really calm things down and allow you to say, okay, now what do I feel? Do I still feel something in my stomach? I'm going to have a drink or I'm going to have some food right now. Do I still feel hot? I'm going to get some cold water. I'm going to run my hands under cold water and I'm going to put ice on my neck, for example.
mm,
And these things will make big, big differences. And they work throughout the course of the day. So I'd love to share
mm.
a couple stories with you about how
Yeah.
this works for women. They're
Yes.
business owners. So we have, I'll start with one of my own. I was in a position where we were walking into a meeting with the NFL, so the National Football League. Now imagine being a female in the NFL situation. It is an all men's organization,
Yeah.
and it's the most manly sport out there, right? It's
Mhm,
just, it is a man's sport. There's very few women that play football. Now there's a women's football league, but then there wasn't. And I got to walk in and have this meeting in the boardroom. And when I walked in, the entire boardroom was all men. And I
mhm,
walked in and I sat down and I have to have a conversation and talk to these guys about giving us game feed for our app that we had developed. And they said they made a comment about women in football. I could feel my heart start to race a little bit. And then I could
mhm.
feel my throat constrict a little bit and I could feel my eyes getting hot. And women, we don't like to get emotional in these situations because this is the whole thing. I can't be getting emotional right now. And yet I'm
Yes.
a little persecuted for being a woman in this room. But
Mhm.
because I had a master's degree in recognition, I could feel it coming. I knew what it was. I was no longer afraid of like, oh crap, here it comes. And now I'm going to destroy myself in this meeting. And I'm going to start crying. And then the whole thing's going to go south. And that's just what women normally do, is go down that rabbit hole. But I have a master's degree in recognition. So I just said, I stood up, and there was a fridge in the corner. I stood up. I walked over and I got a cold bottle of water out of the fridge. I walked back over. I sat down, and underneath the table, I call this executive boardroom regulation. I started tensing and releasing the feet, flexing and releasing the quads, flexing and releasing. And I took my drinks with my breath. And within 30 to 60 seconds, because that's all it takes, my emotions had regulated, I had settled down, and I could engage in a conversation that was really powerful.
Wow.
Women who get a little bit anxious right before they go online. I have a lot of clients that are influencers, and they'll get a little bit anxious about wanting to say the right thing, or wanting to show up the right way, or having people respond negatively to whatever they put out online when they're just trying to speak their truths. And how's this going to affect my family? And how's this going to affect me? And what if this doesn't go well? And then nobody wants to represent me, and I have this. And we spiral ourselves up into this lather of anxiety. And then they try to record right then, and they're wondering why it is that it took me 2.5 hours to put a 30-second reel together, because I couldn't get anything comprehensible to come out of my mouth. As you'll just become just recognize where you're at. Recognize those are all valid concerns. It's okay. Breathe. Get a glass of water. Get some ice. Take a 30-second lap around the house. Give yourself 90 seconds to calm it all down. You'll actually be able to sit in front of that camera and record a 30-second reel in 30 seconds. And the tiny little bit of time you spend identifying that anxiety will actually lead to tremendous levels of productivity and effectiveness in your own business.
Yeah.
That's so good.
That makes
I love
sense?
the exercise
so
of
good,
like
yeah.
tensing. I'm gonna do that for
Chelsea's
sure.
gonna walk in on me.
Just I don't know what I'm doing, so it won't feel so funny. Or teach our kids
Oh,
that.
I know, for real. I'm like our 4-year-old. We could definitely do that with him.
Yes. I'm curious, Natty, if you have any suggestions or tips beyond, like, obviously the one we just did is so good, or paying attention to, like, if your body is getting overheated, give it something cool. But what about like waking up in the middle of the night and almost having like ruminating thoughts? Like, what would you suggest with that?
So we need to recognize that anxiety often is coming from thought, right? We have a thought, and that thought spirals. So I'm going to walk through an example right now that will literally make you both feel a little anxious, probably. Okay.
Okay.
So this is a typical woman that one of my clients that I work with that's starting a business. She wakes up in the night and she has a thought. Oh, you know what? I totally forgot to send that email. Oh my gosh, I forgot to send that email. What else? Oh, you know what else? I forgot to pay the bill. Oh my gosh, paying the bills. I didn't even make enough. But you know what? My numbers are down this month. And why are the numbers down this month? What is happening with the economy? Is everybody else's numbers down this month? Or is it just mine? My business is probably failing. Oh my gosh, if my business fails, I'm going to be so embarrassed because everybody just told me I should do this in the first place. And why did I even do it? Because it's so hard for me. And I didn't spend enough time with my daughter. And now my daughter's going to have trauma. She's going to have to visit a therapist when she's older because I tried to start a business when she was 4 years old. And what was I even thinking? I can't start a business. I don't even have a degree. Do you feel the anxiety that comes from just the pattern? The anxiety is building because we're swirling, and it started with one thought.
Yeah.
But what people tend to do is they have that thought, and then they're like, no, I can't think about that right now. I got to go to bed. Problem is, you've already got some anxiety going on now because your thought didn't just happen one time. The thought connected to another thought and another thought, and now you have 40 concerns, and you don't hear it one time, you hear it 400 times, like it plays on a loop, like a really bad 80s mixtape. And now you have 4,000 concerns. Is it any wonder you can't fall back asleep? If you will keep a pad of paper and a pen by your bed, and when you wake up and have the thought, I need to send the email, write it down so that it doesn't allow for that connected spiral. And if it does start to spiral, write them all down. If you will literally just let them out and then give yourself a window of time in the morning to address them, there's safety in you now falling asleep, because the brain doesn't know good or bad. The brain just knows, I needed to get this information to you. Timing, good, bad, is not what the brain is doing now. It's just giving you the information. If you'll capture it, be like, I heard you, thank you, we can shut that alarm off. We can start to get some control over the spinning and spiraling thoughts too. And there's some very specific exercises we teach on that. That's just like starting point that can help people.
Even like writing it too. There's something about, again, I'm not a brain scientist, but even you saying it out loud, it's even different from thought. Like even you saying it almost starts to sound silly, and then you writing it, it's like that logical center of your brain, and it's like writing it out. I feel like if you're having irrational thoughts basically that are
Right.
like, this is kind of spiraling into something that's just totally not logical. I feel like
Mhm.
writing it is going to almost like feel silly, you know?
Mhm.
And I feel like it deflates it a little bit too. Like some of these things are real things. You got to pay that bill in the morning, but some of them, it's like this big scary monster in your mind. But as soon as you say it or write it
Mhm.
out, it's
That's
like,
right.
okay, actually, there's not really a lot of weight on that
Yeah,
really.
and that is exactly what happens is the writing process activates a part of the conscious mind. And though all
Yeah.
of that thought spiraling is coming usually in the subconscious because it does
Wow.
become irrational and it becomes and it's created by this picture that we hold. And with if
Mm.
and it ends up inevitably attaching to identity because if I have not yet really decided on who I am and how I'm going to show up, then I start trying to show up for all the various different roles or labels in my life. I'm trying to be a mom and I'm trying to be a business owner and I'm trying to be a wife or I'm trying to be a partner and I'm trying to be a friend and I'm trying to be a sister and I'm trying to be a neighbor and I'm trying to be soccer mom and I'm trying to be all the things. And all of those silos start to build up and make it feel like I don't know who I am in any given moment. I'm sitting down here trying to build a business, but I'm a soccer mom, but I'm a mom, but I'm this. And how do I do all of those things and juggle them? And a lot of the anxiety with women in business stems from having like 14 identities. And I would love to encourage business women to just claim one. How do you
Mm.
want to show up and show up that way all the time? My identity statement is that I am an unstoppable daughter of God and an effective teacher of truth. And I will show up that way whether I'm parenting or whether I'm a friend or whether I'm a coach on the soccer field or whether I'm a coach in the business world or whether I'm running my own business. And if you can find one that is really who you are and allow yourself to show up that way all the time, then the anxiety of all the various roles and labels that you're carrying and owning. Right now, you
Mm.
have 14 reasons to spiral when you're waking up in the middle of the night. We'd
Mhm.
love to get rid of those 14 and let you just own one and own it
Mhm.
really effectively.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love that. We have a podcast we did on this thing called switching costs, right? The cost of switching between
Mm.
hats, right? You're wearing the mom hat, you're wearing
Yep.
the business hat. But I feel like that's like the next level of it, which is
Yeah.
like one, reduce as much switching costs as you can, which is we talk about creating buckets and not bouncing back and forth as
Yep.
much. But I think I love that where it's like create
Mhm.
a through line of like, what's your one thing that's true no matter what hat you're wearing? That is so powerful.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah,
awesome. Okay.
it's massive in reducing anxiety for women in business. We've seen it as one of the primary tools that helps
Wow.
them to just settle in and say, actually, I can be a mom and I can run a business because neither are
Yeah.
who I am. Like I have a woman right now I'm working with, and she is a bold and courageous creator and a
Mhm.
Mm,
lover of people. That is her I am statement. And so when she shows up for work, she gets to be a bold and courageous creator. And when her kids show up and they need help with their project for second
yeah.
grade, she gets to be a bold and courageous creator. She gets to show up
Yeah.
the same every time. And it reduces tremendously the anxiety of, wait a second, am I in business mode or I am in mom mode?
Right.
No, I'm in me
Yeah.
mode. And if I get to show up in me mode all the time, I can be substantially more productive and effective in all the aspects of my life.
Mhm.
That
Wow.
tremendous reduction of anxiety.
Yeah.
That's so
That's
freeing. I feel
amazing.
like someone just heard that and you just felt a weight lift off of you.
Yeah.
Take a second, pause this episode and do this. Like actually ask, what is my identity? And that
Mm.
thing that comes to your mind, I would write it down.
Mhm.
I think that thing just freed some people.
Mhm.
I want to just tap into one other level of freedom with you because we talked about, you know, in a situation where you're like, man, I don't want the emotions to come up. You had this
Mhm.
great technique,
Mhm.
but there's this balance, right? I've heard you talk about shunning versus showing emotion.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
what
that's
is the
good.
balance between shunning and showing emotion? Because sometimes, I mean, I feel like we cry all the time. Like my team has all seen me
Right.
cry on calls with them, you
Yeah.
know, and we really love emotion because we feel like it's an invitation to something deeper and showing something. But there are times when it's like, oh, okay, maybe this isn't the right place for it.
Mhm.
So talk about that shunning versus showing emotion, and where does it start, and how can you actually use emotion for your benefit?
Yeah. I think I think there are I would say 90% of the time showing emotion works great. And there's a 10% of the time where we don't actually feel safe showing
Mm,
the emotion because it's not appropriate. Like in this
Mhm.
exact example, the emotion of tears was about to come out because of frustration, not because of feeling. I don't think anybody should ever shy away from depth of feeling. If I
mm,
feel in my heart that we're on to something. And I get like the wow, like I'm that actually just like brought me to tears a little bit. That is emotional because that is real. I don't think
Mm.
anyone should ever shy away from that moment. And there's moments in the business world that quite really, I can't take my moment of frustration and start crying about it. Like if I get pulled over by an officer on the side of the road, tears don't actually get you out of a ticket, right?
Yeah.
They sometimes make the
Right.
situation
Yeah.
worse.
Right.
And there are times where we really feel like I really don't want to cry right now. I'm overwhelmed by the emotions I feel because they come from a place of panic, frustration, and negativity. And those are
Mm.
the moments that I want us to be able to feel like in the moment where I need to keep it in a minute, I get to keep it in. Now the key to that
Mm.
is there is always must be a moment of release, always. So once I finished that round in the NFL meeting, when I finished that little moment of regulation in the boardroom, we took a little break. Well, what did I do on the break? I went into the women's bathroom. I did 10 air squats and I air punched as hard and fast as I could for 30 seconds because
Yeah.
all of that frustration needed to come out.
Yeah.
The objective is not to shove and suppress. The objective is to regulate and control and then always release. Always.
Mm.
And so I think that's one of the things as moms, for an example, we'll give a mom business example. We're in the middle of doing something and our child comes in our office. The number of times this happens and the number of times I hear this on my calls with my clients is amazing, right? This is a daily experience. And I was in the middle of something and my mind is focused on here and then my kid's trying to get my attention and then something happens and I feel like I want to yell at my child right now. And I don't want to yell at my child right now. So I suppress that and I do this. Okay, what do you need? Right? Like I'm trying to keep it under control.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's probably an appropriate thing to do with our child. And where did all of that frustration just go? Because if we take that breath, like I had this exact situation happen with a client, her child had Legos everywhere. She asked the kid to pick up the Legos. It didn't pick up the Legos. She's walking down the hall. She steps on the Legos. I need you to pick up the Legos as she turns around and walks back in, but she doesn't deal with the actual emotion of frustration and
Right.
pain. She
Yeah.
just shoved it down and then she felt pretty good about herself because she didn't yell at her kid.
Mhm.
2 minutes later, she goes out because she's got to grab something and she steps on another Lego. Well, this time she loses her crap all over her child because where did the first emotion go? Now we're stacking.
Mhm.
There has to be a release and it's got to be physical and tangible. Like give yourself a voice physically. Like if you feel that urge come out, like if you need to move, go for a walk. If you need to
Mhm.
move intensely, do 10 push-ups as fast as you can. Do 10 air squats as fast as you can. Punch the air. I have an actual punching bag in my basement that I'll hit for
Mhm.
60 seconds and just give the release out so that I have control over my emotions when the moment comes that I need them. So
Mhm.
hopefully that gives a good difference
That's powerful.
between showing them, controlling them, always honoring them. Like I would say for me, the big thing is always honor.
Mm.
Mm.
Always honor your
Yeah.
emotions.
We've been working through this with like, our 4-year-old, right? Because he's
Yeah.
just really coming into, we got a little 2-year-old, he's a little brother.
Mhm.
And he just he just gets that
Yeah.
rage in him, like gets real
Mhm.
close in his face, like,
Uh-huh.
and so we're just trying to be like, okay, the frustration's okay, the anger's okay, but
Mhm.
like hitting is not okay, right?
Mhm.
Like, or like, let's do this instead. But do you have anything that works really well for little kids? This is just a
Yeah.
selfish question, but I know some of our parents will relate.
Yeah.
For little kids to kind of learn to
How to
recognize and
regulate.
regulate and release.
Yep. And we teach little kids the same way we teach as adults in terms of honoring the emotion they felt. So you feel upset, and we always say it's okay to feel upset, and there's a time and place to let that out.
Mhm.
And so with little kids, we will literally like put up hands and say, okay, we don't hit our brother and we feel frustration, right? I want you to go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, hit the hand. And I've had little kids like punch the hand, like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, punch the hand. And what's funny is after they do that for like 30 seconds, they'll start laughing.
Yeah.
The second they're there, they're regulated. Little kids can regulate really, really quickly. And yet what we normally do is we get angry with them for having a fight response. So the fight and flight
Yeah.
response in children and in adults is quite innate, right? It's actually built
Yeah.
into us for our safety that tells us in a
Yeah.
moment when we feel unsafe for whatever reason, emotionally or physically, we're going to have a fight or flight response. So we got a little kid, he has a supernatural fight response, and then we tell him not to do that.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's better for us actually to teach them, I understand that you feel the need to hit something right now.
Yeah.
And that's protecting you. I get that. And it's not safe for you to hit your brother. If you hit your brother, you're going to get in trouble, big trouble. Right. So
Yeah.
it's not the need to let it out that's the problem. It's directing that in the right way. And when we teach them to direct, it works really well. I have an 11-year-old now. He's my youngest, but my kids have been learning this for years. And I have a teenage son who will come in and he'll say, Mom, I need to talk to you about something. And we'll start talking and he'll get frustrated and he'll say, I need a minute. And he'll go downstairs and hit the punching bag as hard as he can. And then he'll come upstairs and we can have a conversation perfectly fine.
Yeah.
I have another
That's
child who
amazing.
needs to move. And we tend as parents, like, we go to talk to this kid and they're trying to run all over the place. And we're like, sit them down and stare them in the eyes.
Yeah.
And we're much better off if we say, hey, let's walk and talk.
Yeah.
Let's walk and talk. We need to honor their little body's need to move while we also can help them move forward. So I think there's a lot of that where we just recognize that our kids' response that's very physical is innate. If we have problems with that or tell them it is a problem, we get them a lot of frustration. When we help them see that we always want to honor the emotion and we can choose how that looks. It doesn't come out from a space of out of control. We can actually help them recognize what they're feeling and show them a healthy way to release emotion and feel it and make it okay for them.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for that advice
Yes.
and on everything. I think we took so many notes and are taking so many of these tips for like our own life with our boys, regulating motion, showing motion. It's all so good. And Natty, if our listeners want to get in contact with you and want to learn more, maybe see some of your awesome reels that you're putting out on Instagram, talking more in depth about this, what's the best way for people to connect with you?
Yeah, so they can connect with me on Instagram at natty.o.lewis, or they can check out our website at ascendeq.com.
Sendeq.com. Awesome. We'll put that all in the show notes. Natty, this was an amazing episode. Like I said, I think there was some freedom released on this episode. Like those techniques, those exercises, I know we're going to be hearing stories from our community for weeks, for years after this episode, just being like, I'm still using that to this day. And I heard it on that episode. So for our listener,
I hope it helps.
Yeah.
It did.
Yes. Oh, it definitely did. And for our listeners, share this with somebody because I think this episode can really help others. So if this helped you, share it with someone in your life who it's also going to help. And then you guys can hold each other accountable to leveling up in this area. So thank you, Natty. We'll see you on the next one.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Rainmaker Family Show. If you're not a part of our mastermind yet, I want to say I think you're missing out. Our heart here at Rainmakers is to create total abundance for you. That's why we're offering a free one-on-one family freedom design session for you, our faithful listener.
Yeah, if you want to hop on a call with our team, see if it's a good fit to build a business that creates time freedom for you, financial abundance, and helps you leave that thriving family legacy. That's what we're all about in our mastermind. You can grab a time on our team's calendar at rainmakerfamily.com/mastermind. Again, that's rainmakerfamily.com/mastermind.